Good morning. So, we're going to be reading our mystery Ben 2 assessment, and I'm going to read it to you, and you're going to be answering the questions. So, you should have a question sheet that looks like this here, and make sure you write your name on it and the date. Number 1 says, what is the mystery in this story? Now, you're not answering yet, we're just reading the questions so that we know what we're looking for. Number 2 says, who is the crime solver in this story? And what do you know about her? Number 3 is, who are the two suspects in the story? And what are their motives, according to Annie? Number 4 says, what is the red herring in this mystery? And number 5 is, what clues did Annie use to solve the mystery? List 3 clues. All right, so those are your questions for your test. So now we're going to read the story. Now remember, you are expected to spell these names right because they are right in front of you, right like here. All right, here's the title of the story. And then there was one. Someone is puppy napping cute critters, and it's up to Annie to crack the case. No! The scream jerked Annie awake. The 12-year-old sat up, banging her head on a puppy cage and sending fur and bits of paper flying. What the kibble is going on? She wondered, glancing at her watch. It was only 6 a.m. Paul Town's one and only animal detective had been having a nice, peaceful dream about flowing water, and it took her a second to figure out where she was. On the shelves around her, there were cages filled with animals. 5 red parrots in one, 4 mutt puppies in another, countless hamsters, ferrets, kittens, even an emu. Now she remembered. Of course, she was in the furry critters pet shop. 2 days ago, a crook had stolen a valuable blue coat puppy from the store. Annie had spent last night here, planning to look for clues, but she must have fallen asleep. No! There was that scream again. With a sinking feeling, Annie jumped to her feet and rushed toward the sound. 2 aisles over, she found Miss Selenow, the plump woman who ran the pet shop. She was standing next to a large cage, and her face was wet with tears. Are you okay? Annie asked. Before Miss Selenow could answer, a tall, thin figure sprinted through the front door. It was Tater, a man who did odd jobs around the shop. I was on my way to work and could hear you screaming down the street, Tater cried, hurrying over to them. What's happened? Miss Selenow blew her nose into a blue handkerchief. I just got here, she sobbed. A second puppy has been dog napped. She pointed a finger with a gold ring at the cage, which held the small blue coat dogs, famous for their blue color. Because they were so rare and valuable, Miss Selenow had the only key to the cage, and only she fed and cared for them. Annie peered into the cage where the mother dog paced nervously and just one little blue puppy cowered in the corner. Another blue coat is missing, Tater asked, leaning against the big sink where the animals were bathed. Those puppies are too young to be without their mom. They could be in danger. This made Miss Selenow sob even louder. She turned to Annie. When I hired you yesterday to find my stolen puppy, there were still 2.
Interruption. Lisa Hawkins, please call extension 2489. Lisa Hawkins, please call 2489.
Now, one more is gone. I thought you were supposed to be a great animal detective, Annie said miserably. I am. Or at least she wanted to be. Right now, she felt like a failure. How could she have fallen asleep on the job? Just then, a burly man wearing a fancy black suit burst into the store and stormed over to them. Annie recognized Mr. Keys right away. He owned 3 stores in town that sold keys and locks. I must have a blue puppy today, Miss Selenow, he demanded. The mayor is coming over to my house and I need to have the best dog. I'll pay any price. Miss Selenaw stepped between him and the blue coat's cage. I've told you again and again, Mr. Keys. I've already sold these puppies to Miss Gotrocks. When they're old enough to leave their mother, she'll get them and no one else. Turning so red that he looked like a balloon about to pop, Mr. Keys shouted, I'll get one of those blue dogs. Just you wait. He left the shop, slamming the door and speeding away in his limousine. Miss Selenaw was still crying. I don't care about money, she moaned. I'd never sell my puppies to a person like Mr. Keys. Not sure what to do now, Annie ran a hand through her hair, and her fingers touched something. She plucked free a piece of paper about half the size of an index card. What's this? She wondered out loud. Miss Selenaw sniffled. A clue it's time to wash your hair? She didn't wait for an answer. I'm going in the back to weep for my lost blue coats. With her silver bracelets jangling, Miss Selenaw wandered off to the back of the shop. Annie looked down at the paper in her hand. It had yesterday's date and read, 3 mutt puppies for sale. Get them cheap. She never understood why mutts were sold for so much less than purebred dogs like the bluecoats. Mutts were just as good as pets. The little sign must have fallen into her hair when she banged her head against Mutt's cage. Annie's instincts told her it might be an important clue, but she couldn't figure out how it would help crack the case. If only Annie could think, but a loud crunching sound kept distracting her. Tater was standing next to her, eating dog biscuits that were shaped like little bones. I brought a sandwich with me last night, Annie said, feeling sorry for him. Do you want half? No thanks, Tater said through a mouthful of biscuits. I like this stuff. Annie didn't think that was possible. She had once been trapped in the wilderness for 2 weeks, and she wasn't sure she'd have eaten dog treats even then. Maybe you should make sure Miss Selenaw is okay, Annie suggested. Tater nodded and slinked off, still munching away. Alone now, Annie thought about the case and the main suspects. Who could be stealing the blue coat puppies? Miss Selenaw had the only key to the cage, but Mr. Keys was a locksmith. Did he pick the lock on the cage and steal the puppies? And then there was Tater. Was he eating dog treats because he was desperate for money? Desperate enough to nab the puppies and sell them to Mr. Keys? Annie turned her attention back to the cage. The blue coat mother was pacing in there, looking forlorn. If only she could tell Annie what had happened to her puppies. Maybe she can, Annie thought, spotting something in the dog's mouth. Annie smushed her face up against the cage to get a better look. It was a piece of blue cloth. That's when all the clues came together. The sound of flowing water in her dream, the piece of cloth, the sign about the mutts, everything clicked into place. Annie let out a howl of excitement, thinking she might have solved the case. To make sure, though, she would wait until tonight to spring her trap. 10 hours later, the shop was closed for business. The lights were off, and most of the animals were asleep in the darkness. Annie was lying on the floor, pretending to snore. She could hear the sound of the front door opening and closing. The dog napper was in the shop. Footsteps headed slowly toward the cage, holding the last blue coat puppy. In the blink of an eye, Annie sat up and clicked on her flashlight, trapping the crook in the beam of light. Hello, Annie said. I've been expecting you. Getting to her feet, Annie kept the flashlight pointed at the shopkeeper. Good evening, Miss Selenaw. Looking surprised, Miss Selenaw froze next to the blue coat's cage. She stammered, I just came here to steal another animal. Annie finished for her. You think I'm the bad guy? Miss Selenaw started sobbing again. Why would I steal my own blue coat puppies? Because you never had them, Annie said, not buying the woman's crocodile tears. The plump woman pretended to be shocked. You saw them with your own eyes. Look, there's one now. Miss Selenaw pointed at the blue fur ball in the cage. Annie shook her head. That isn't a blue coat. It's a mutt. You used blue dye to make the mutts look like blue coats. Then you sold the fake puppies to make some quick money. Money, Miss Selenaw cried. I don't care about money. You say that, but you're covered in gold and silver jewelry, Annie said, gesturing to the woman's rings and bracelets. Miss Silenow didn't bother arguing. You knew that if the puppies went home with Miss Gotrock, she would learn the truth, Annie continued. But you wouldn't have to give the money back if the puppies were stolen first. So you hired me to make your dog napping story more believable. But you know the real story, do you? The woman said, rubbing her eyes. That's right, Annie said. The past 2 nights you came in here and took one of the phony puppies out of the bluecoat's cage and washed off the blue dye. Annie flashed her light on the sink used to bathe the animals, and then back on Miss Silenow. That's why I dreamt about running water. I heard the sound from the faucet, even though I was asleep. I think you're still dreaming, dear, Miss Silenow said sarcastically. I don't have to listen to this. Before she could walk away, Annie stopped her. There's more. At some point, the blue coat female bit off a piece of the handkerchief you used to dry the mud. I found the cloth in her mouth, and I'd bet it would perfectly match your handkerchief. Miss Silenow threw up her hands in disbelief. And where did I stash this squeaky clean mutt? In with the other mutts, of course, Annie answered. This morning I noticed there were 4 mutts in the cage, but according to this sign, there should only be 3. Annie held up the paper that read, 3 mutt puppies for sale. Get them cheap. The extra mutt is the one you washed off and put in with the others last night. Suddenly, all the fake sadness drained out of Miss Selenow's face. She looked like an angry, cornered animal ready to pounce. So what if you're right? She hissed. No one is going to believe you. I wouldn't be too sure about that, Annie said. That was when Tater stepped out of the shadows where Annie had asked him to watch and listen. I believe Annie, he told Miss Selenow. We're going to call the police, and you're going to give back Miss Gotrock's money. Miss Selenow seemed to realize she was caught. Oh no, she whined and slumped against the wall. She started sobbing, and for the first time, Annie thought there were real tears. Are you going to lose your job? Annie asked Tater, worried about his future. Tater smiled. Actually, this is my store. Miss Selenow just worked here. And guess what, Miss Selenow? He asked, popping a dog biscuit into his mouth. You're fired. All right, so now thinking about the story, I'm going to read the question and you're going to answer it. If you need to, you can go back and listen to the story as many times as you would like. So you could pause it and go all the way back to the beginning and listen to it again if you need to answer it to get these questions right. Now remember, I read this to you, so you should be getting these questions right. Number 1, what is the mystery in this story? Pause the video and answer the question. What is the mystery in this story? Right? You should have answered number 1. Number 2, who is the crime solver in this story? And what do you know about her? So who is your detective, the crime solver, and I want to hear about what you know about her. So you need to tell me the person's name and something about her. So, who is the crime solver and what do you know about her? Pause the video, answer the question. Number 3, who are the 2 suspects in the story? So you need to write down 2 people that are suspects. Who's acting sus in this story? And then what are their motives? So you might want to write on one line the first person's name and maybe on the second line the second person's name. And you want to write why they would do it. So, and don't forget, Annie talked about it in the story. Annie talks about their motives. Why would they do it? So write down the 2 suspects and something about each one of them on why they could have done it. Why did they act sus? Pause the video and answer the question. Number 4, what is the red herring in this mystery? So remember, a red herring is that's right, a fake clue, a phony clue. So what is the phony clue in this mystery? What is the red herring? So what tricked us in this story? So what was a clue that wasn't a true clue? Go ahead and pause the video and answer the question. And lastly, number 5, what clues did Annie use to solve the mystery? Now, there's lots of clues in here, but I want you to list 3 clues that Annie did to solve this. So 1, 2, 3. Tell me 3 things that were clues in this story that Annie used to solve the mystery. Again, if you need to, go back and listen to it again. All right. At any point you need to hear something again, you can always hit pause and then go back and make sure you answer these questions. There's names on the pages. So do your best. Thank you.